Welcome everyone to another performance clinic. Today it's Advanced Diagnostics with Dynatrace. As you can see, we got a new layout here for the slides. You've also, I'm sure, noticed that Dynatrace.com has got a new layout. It's a really cool website that our marketing team and our website team has put out there, so check it out. Now, this is part of my performance clinic series, and more of these performance clinics, those that are upcoming and those that have been recorded in the past, can be found by following these links or going to YouTube. This is all about Dynatrace. Everything I show you can be done either with SaaS or managed. If you want to get your own SaaS trial, here's the short link, or of course you can go to the website and just sign up for the free trial. And then I also have a podcast. It's called Pure Performance. I run it with my colleague Brian Wilson, and we try to interview thought leaders in the space. So it would be great, if you want to listen to some thoughts on the latest in technology, everything surrounding performance, everything surrounding about digital transformation, check out our podcast. Now, today is about advanced diagnostics with Dynatrace. And I want to point out, I did a session a couple of months ago that are called Basic Diagnostics that you can also find on the YouTube channel. Here's also a bit.ly link in case you can't find it. So it's bit.ly/OneAgent tutorials that also gets you to the YouTube channel. Now I'm covering some aspects from that tutorial as well, but I go into some other aspects today a little more deeper, hopefully, right? Now, let's get started. For those that don't know Dynatrace, or if you want to get started, really the only thing you need to do with Dynatrace, you have to install the so-called one agent. It's a single agent that rules them all or that monitors them all. So the way this works, if you sign up for Dynatrace, you have the capability to choose your operating system. We make it very easy to install, right? It's a single download that installs the agent that then also exactly knows where to send data to. So the package itself knows where to send data to. It's zero configuration, then you just install it. We see a lot of people using Chef, Puppet, Ansible, PowerShell scripts, putting it into Terraform scripts or into CloudFormation. The idea is once you package the agent, once you install it in your target environment, whether it's your local workstation where you develop, whether it's your CI/CD system, whether it's a testing environment or production environment, the one agent will automatically monitor everything for you. From the host, the processes, the services, all the way to applications, also seeing into Docker containers and into all of your, let's say, microservices that are running in a PaaS-like environment. Now, for certain environments, let's say when you run on Kubernetes, when you run on OpenShift, when you run on Cloud Foundry or the different SaaS vendors, we got you covered as well, right? We have integrations, and it's just as easy to install the one agent on these platforms for getting full stack visibility for Kubernetes, as I said, OpenShift. There's a lot of cool things out there. The best thing that I can suggest you to do, if you are logged into Dynatrace and you click on Deploy Dynatrace, there's a PaaS integration section where you can see how to monitor your Azure websites, your Cloud Foundry, OpenShift, your Kubernetes. And if there's something else out there that you do, I just go either to our website, our blog, or just use my favorite search engine, and I type in Dynatrace and then the technology that you want to monitor. And I'm pretty sure you'll find a blog post or a doc page that explains how to monitor this particular type of environment. All right. Now, what do you get? And I think the things that are pretty cool, right? Smartscape, you can see here a Smartscape from an environment where the one agent is actually installed on a GKE cluster, so on Kubernetes. Dynatrace automatically gives you the full visibility. All the dependency maps are automatically detected, and we call it Smartscape. Now, the cool thing is, looks great on the UI, interactive, but it can also be queried through the REST API for use cases where you want to bake in, let's say, deployment checks or architectural validation checks into your CI/CD process. That's one thing that you can do. So it's pretty cool. Also, I mean, what Dynatrace does pretty well is we baseline all the metrics, all the dependencies, and then we open up these problem tickets. Pretty cool. We tell you what the problem is, the impact, we give it a root cause, you can click on the root cause, and then you go directly into diagnostics. This is a very easy to use classical diagnostic use case when running in, let's say, in a production environment or in a high load environment where we can look at the baselines and then alert on violations. We also have problem evolution, which is also extremely valuable because you actually show you how did the problem start, where did it start, and how did it trickle through the system, and we show you all the events that happened along the way. And what are are these events? These events could be configuration change events, deployment events, a slowdown, a network connection lost, a slow database. So all these events are automatically monitored by Dynatrace. So super easy and very well received by most of our users that are using Dynatrace in a large scale, high load production environment or in a pre-prod or in a continuous performance environment. So it's all cool. But the thing is, right, the title of this talk, presentation today is Diagnostics with Dynatrace. What do you do if everything is healthy? We still want to diagnose. We want to figure out how can we make the system faster? Where can we optimize? How can I just analyze something like a particular time frame, for instance, the data from a load testing run? Or I just want to analyze what happens typically on a Friday afternoon on my system, and I want to see what's happening there with the user behavior. So Dynatrace has a lot of options to diagnose. Right? And we'll go into some of these in more detail, but there's a huge list of options in the Dynatrace menu. Now, today I want to focus on these areas. Web request analysis, because I know that a lot of you are either analyzing websites or web service interfaces, REST interfaces, microservice interfaces. Exceptions is a big topic that I'm trying to tell people we need to get a handle of too many exceptions that are too noisy for the system, how we can detect those. Database patterns, right? The classical N+1 query problem, too many database statements being executed. I want to show you that. Then how we can analyze microservices, how they're calling each other, also bad call patterns, how they're deployed. If you do blue-green deployments, how Dynatrace can handle this. And then in the end, I want to quickly cover the PurePath. Now we do have, I know it's an hour session, but I want to definitely make sure that we have time for questions as well. I have a couple of slides prepared. But I think instead of just going through slides, I believe it's better to see it live. The slides, by the way, will be uploaded later on to Dynatrace University. So everything I want to show you today, or that I will show you, you will also have the slides later on. But let me actually go walk over to my Dynatrace environment. And I can see there's questions coming in, and that's great. So make sure that you are putting questions into the question feature of GoToWebinar, and I'll try to come to as many as possible. So now here I'm logged in to my Dynatrace demo environment. I'm sure many of you have probably seen our Easy Travel environment. And what I have prepared here is a dashboard that actually shows me a web request, an endpoint of one of my services that is dear to my heart. It's the calculate recommendations. I see an overview. I see it over time, what the response time is and the count, and also CPU per request. But how do I get to these type of dashboards, and how would I analyze it? Now, there's different ways to analyze web requests. The first option would be, right, if you've instrumented your environment, you can go to transactions and services, and then Dynatrace will show you all the services that we have. And it seems there's a lot of them, right? 137. Now this might be overwhelming because which one is the service that I'm interested in? This is where tagging comes in, right? We have, as you can see here, we do a lot of automated tagging, we can, for instance, say, well, I only want to focus on my payment services, so now I only get to see my payment services. How tagging works, how Dynatrace can extract tags, this is another session that I did on one-on-one tagging best practices. But this is a very cool way of putting metadata, and then it's easier to find your services, right? So I focused on payment here. We can also do, let me show all of the stuff that is around my Easy Travel application, right? So this is my Easy Travel app. So I can look into this, or if I really want to just see everything, then of course I can do this, and I can even do like a quick search. If I, for instance, say I want to look at my front-end service, then I can do this as well, and I can obviously look at my services. I can look at the failure rate, the request. What I also like a lot, if you are in table views like this, you can switch to a chart view. So now it actually charts me in this case, the throughput across all of my services, in this case, all the front-end services. And then I could filter it even further down using my tags. And then a nice thing is I can also put this onto a dashboard. So these are cool things. Now let me actually go into one of the services. So my Easy Travel customer front-end. The way I would analyze web requests, the first thing that I always do, I actually have a look at the current hotspots, because Dynatrace automatically, figures out what are the top URLs and who is consuming most of the CPU and response time. So that's a nice out of the box. Maybe you want to focus on something that is slow, but if you want to see all of them, you can click on View Dynamic Requests, right? And then you get into the details view here. And in the details view, we by default get an overview of median response time. You can switch to the 90th percentile. I can also switch to the slowest 5%, right? So I get to see response time of the whole service. But now if I scroll down on the bottom, I can see top requests. So Dynatrace automatically sees every single endpoint, and it gives me an overview of what are the slowest 5% actually, what is the slowest in terms of the 90th, 95th percentile, the median. So every URL here is listed, and I can click on every URL, right? Let's say orange booking payment, and if I click on it, what happens? It actually adds a filter up here. So it adds a filter, and now it only shows me, in this case, the median response time of this particular endpoint. I can also switch to the slowest. I can also switch to the 95th percentile. I can also do a failure analysis. So do we have any failures coming in, whether it's failures that we detect as a failure, and you can tell Dynatrace what a failure should be. I can also look at HTTP errors, 400s, 500s. Fortunately, nothing here. I can look at CPU consumption per request. This is very interesting, especially if you deploy changes and you want to see how the CPU consumption is per individual request that goes in. And I can also do my throughput analysis. Right? Now the cool thing with this is if you have a particular transaction that you want to analyze further, like in this case my orange booking payment, I can select a particular time frame. You can, hopefully you can see this, there's a little blue bar. This is the analysis time, right? I can also make this bigger, like an hour, or I can switch it to, like, say, a certain area. And then what I really recommend you to do is focus on these analysis options here. Like Dynatrace can automatically view the response time hotspot. It tells me, it crunches through all the data and says, hey, where is most of the time spent? And then it immediately points out, well, most of the time is actually spent in this service by making a call to the to the check credit card service that is hosted by the booking service, right? And this is where I can then go further. I can also do my service flow analysis. So here is where you can then immediately go in and say, okay, I've narrowed down. You can see here the filter is taken over. I'm still looking at my easy travel front end, but only at my booking service, right, where I had a request to check credit card, and now I can see that I'm looking at 367 requests that on average take 1.2.5 seconds. They all make calls to the booking service makes calls to the credit card validation, and then eventually it ends up in the database. And then from here, as you can see, every time I click through each individual service along the service flow, I get more information on the right side here about how many transactions are actually passing through this particular tier, how many are failing, how many are successful. I can also switch to the infrastructure view. I can see, is this running on a single instance or is this multi-instance? So if you are running this in a Kubernetes cluster, you would see every single Docker container here. And then you can see how load distribution is, how if individual ones are failing more or less. On the database, it's also very interesting. If it's a database node, you can go directly and say, well, show me the database statements that are executed. Now, in this case, I see it's the select is blocked from block credit cards, and I can see actually the distribution of this call that is made by this particular transaction to this particular database statement. Okay, so these are some very cool things we can do. I want to quickly go back to what I kind of as a best practice. Let's go back to the service actually that I had earlier. Let's pick the Easy Travel Customer front end again. It is really great to go into the service here and then pick individual URLs, right? That's great. I typically, start here and figure out what is slow, which one are called very often. If you have particular transactions that are very important for you, then you can make them into so-called key requests. So you can actually mark, if I click on one of these links, right, now I'm focusing on my orange booking payment. You can then mark them as key request. In this case, this one is already marked as a key request, so I could remove it. but I want to keep it there. Now, what is a key request? A key request means that Dynatrace will always baseline this particular transaction, not only if it falls into the top transactions. And then the nice thing about this is we always get baselining, we always get alerting, we can also specify custom thresholds, and we could also and can also put them on our dashboard. So coming back to where I was earlier, my dashboard here where I started, it has the calculate recommendation endpoint on it. And the reason why I could put it on here is because I mark it as a key request. And this allows me actually then to go in, these are all of my different key requests. There's a couple of endpoints that run on different services. And these are key requests that I can then put on a chart. And I can, as I said, I can analyze, I can use the baselining feature, and what I can also do, I can set thresholds. And then what I've done with customers in the past, also in a pre-production environment, if you have key transactions that should not take longer than a certain amount of time, then you can set a static threshold, and then you can use, for instance, our integration with Slack or Jira. Just this week we did an integration with MetaMost. So while you run your test and one of your key transactions is exceeding a certain threshold, you can automatically get the alert from Dynatrace while the test, for instance, is still running. And obviously the same also works in a production environment. All right, so let me show you another thing. It's great to be able to go into a service, right, and focus on a service. But what if you don't know what your service is? What if you are a tester and you're testing certain endpoints and you don't know where it lives, you don't want to search through it? This is where diagnostic tools comes in. Under diagnostic tools, under top web requests, right? So, and by the way, thanks again for all the questions. As a lot of them are coming in, I will try to address them at the end. There's a couple of while I'm waiting here, the problem evolution is not a new feature. The problem evolution has been in there for quite a while, since the beginning, and I can show you this as well. I will try to get to as many questions at the end, but please put them in, okay, into the Q&A feature. So here's the top web request view, and I love this view, and thanks to the product management team that put it in, because here's what it does. It actually analyzes my whole environment, and it looks at all the web requests that came in, like in this case, in the last 2 hours. Now, maybe this is too much, right? Because if you're monitoring your prod environment, your pre-prod, and your dev environment, you may not want to look at all this data. This is where management zones come in. Management zones are a great feature where you can dissect your environment, where you can put filters or wrappers around it. Like in my case, I have in management zones for Azure, for Cloud Foundry, for Kubernetes, my production, my staging, my test environment. So I can say, I only want to focus on staging. So you click on that. By the way, management zones, if you want to know more about management zones, again, your favorite search engine, Dynatrace management zones, you find it. Everything is tagged based. So in this case, I'm now only analyzing my my staging environment. Now, if I'm a tester, or if I am a developer and I want to focus on, and I know what type of URL I have, right? I mean, I can scroll down here and I can see a lot of these endpoints that Dynatrace detects. But maybe this is not what I'm interested in. Maybe I know that all of my, like in my Easy Travel application, most of our URLs start with orange. So I can actually say, Dynatrace, I want to add a filter. So I only want to see those requests where the URL contains orange. I will /orange. I can apply. So now then it crunches flow the data, and then it shows me those that have to do something with orange. Right? So this is now a nice and easy way to find all of the URLs, all of your endpoints, your REST API, your microservice endpoints in your whole environment, or in this case, just in staging, and get an overview of how often they're called, also which service is exposing it, and then you can do your analysis again. Do you want to do a throughput analysis? Do you want to sort it by response time? Do you want to figure out what are those with the highest failure rate? Unfortunately, no failures. What about the slowest, like the 90th percentile? And so on and so forth, right? And then, for instance, I can pick one of those, like Orange JSF. Now I get an overview, or I get directly in here into the details of Orange JSF, and then I can do my same analysis as before. So now I can say, hey, show me a particular time frame and show me the hotspots. Right? I go into the hotspot analysis, and then I get to see what is slowing me down. Calls to the credit card again, calls to store booking, calls to find journeys. This is all there. So as a reminder, I really love this feature. I really love the fact that in the top web request view, I can easily find particular endpoints, but not only endpoints. I can say I only want to look at those, for instance, that have an that are HTTP posts. Right? I'm pretty sure in your microservice environments, you're having gets, posts, puts, and so it's very easy there. This is you can add as many filters as you want here. You can also say I only want to have those where the response code is 200, or 300, or 400, where a certain exception is thrown. A certain request attribute, that's interesting. So with Dynatrace, you can actually capture HTTP parameters, method arguments, return values, and they get captured along the PurePath, and then you can say, I only want to see those that have a particular method argument in a particular method. Or my classic use case is for load testing, where if you're running load test against Dynatrace, we have a best practice that your load testing tools are adding a particular HTTP header on every request with the name of the load test, with the test step name, and then you can actually say, only show me those tests, only show me the request that came in from a load test. And actually, let me show you this as well. I'm going to quickly switch over to another environment. So this environment that I'm showing you now is actually an environment that is triggered by Jenkins. So I have a Jenkins environment. And by the way, we'll do another performance clinic in I think on November 12th, where we talk about the performance signature plugin here. But it's a Jenkins where I run, on a build-to-build basis, I execute JMeter scripts. And the JMeter scripts are tagged, so that means JMeter is actually putting a little tag on each request. And what I've done in Dynatrace, so here now, this is my other Dynatrace environment. This is where Jenkins is deploying microservices to a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm looking now at the time frame. October 19th, so it was last week when I ran a couple of tests, and I said, show me Dynatrace, show me everything that you've seen in my whole Kubernetes cluster. But I know I just did I'm just interested in a particular service because I just ran my pipeline against my cards service. So again, just as I did earlier, I love my management zones. So I define the management zones. I define the management zone that only filters on my cards service. So only show me requests that came into the microservice cards that is hosted on Kubernetes. That's great. I can already kind of make out where my load tests were, where my different builds were. But now I can go a step further. I can say, I want to add a filter because I don't want to see everything because maybe somebody else is running some tests. Maybe there's some background noise going on. So only focus on those requests where JMeter put in the load testing name. So LTM is our best practice. So this is an HTTP header that can be added. And if this HTTP header is present, Dynatrace knows about that this is actually coming in this case from JMeter. So I'm filtering it down again. So now I'm really only looking at those requests that came in from my different load tests. And you can see here, so these were like 1, 2, 3, 4 builds. The first 3 builds, as you can see, they're all executing the same load, but they're much faster because the system was much faster. Therefore, the same throughput was done in a much shorter time. This build here, I simulated a little hiccup, let's call it that way. So for this build, the load test couldn't get all the throughput through because the system was so much slower, right? And that's great to know, right? Dynatrace shows me this, but now the question is, well, first of all, I immediately get to see these requests because I filtered it down on the card service with a particular attribute. But now I want to know what is the difference? What is the difference from this build with the previous build or test run? Why didn't we get as much throughput through? So I can now select this particular time frame. And I can say, well, I want to know, I see there were 2 endpoints, add to cart and get health. That's interesting, but let's focus on add to cart because this seems to be the one that was executed more often. And I want to compare it with the time frame of the previous test, which started at 5:10 and went until 5:15. So I can click on compare. right? And I now wanna compare this time frame with the time frame of the previous test. So this was October 19. I think it was 5:05 if I'm not mistaken. Apply. Here we go. So right. So we see the one test here on the left where we have an average response time of about 2 seconds. Here we have an average response time of about 1 second. So it's like twice as slow. And I see the throughput, so all the number of transactions therefore went twice as fast. Now, the comparison view is cool here. I could expand it, and I could obviously immediately see, well, there's one endpoint, and it's much slower. But really, what is the difference? So like you can click on Compare Response Time Hotspot, and now Dynatrace crunches through all the data from one load test and the other, or let's say all the requests that came in on my cart service that runs in Kubernetes, that has the tag from the load test. So I'm only really focusing on these requests, and I'm comparing it with the other time frame from the previous test. And it immediately tells me the difference is wait time. That's the number one thing. So active wait time. So it seems somebody put some weight in there, or something is slower because of wait. So I click on active wait, and then I can click on a few method hotspots, and then Dynatrace brings me directly to the hotspot view. And here I have to say my preference is actually going right to the hotspots tab here, because it immediately shows me what are the top methods, the top contributors. And the top contributor in this case is a thread sleep. Well, that's why it's waiting. And if you click on thread sleep on the bottom, you actually get to see who is calling thread sleep. And it seems it's called by the items controller add to cart. So somebody put a sleep in there. Now, obviously, this is a very simple example, but what I wanted to show you is that it's very easy now to compare two test runs with each other. And it automatically tells you what is the difference. And then it brings it down to the method level to tell you, what is the difference between A and between B. All right. So this is one thing that I wanted to show you. All right. Now let's quickly jump back to the slides. I want to make sure I didn't forget anything. As I said earlier, the slides are there. I walked through all the steps that I just showed you. We talked about the top rep requests. We talked about the request attributes, so we can capture request attributes. By the way, request attributes can be configured in settings, and then request attributes, you can capture HTTP method, HTTP parameters, method arguments, and then they enrich the context information. So if you're drilling down to individual, data on transactions, you can actually see why is this transaction slower than the other. Maybe it's an input parameter that was different. All right. I also talked about the key requests, right? You can mark individual URLs as key requests. Why are they cool? I showed it to you. I told you that you can actually then specify thresholds. And for instance, you can get a Slack notification in case it's slow. The other thing that I didn't mention earlier, you can then also use it and pull it through the REST API. That's pretty neat too. So that means you can, write your own tool and pull it out on a regular basis. So how is my, let's say, calculate recommendations doing? Well, we can put it on a dashboard too, right? You saw it earlier, so you can look at it on the dashboard and you can see it over time when you run your tests. So for all the load testers out there, I'm sure when you are load testing your individual microservices, I assume that you will put key requests into the different endpoints, or you will mark them as key requests, and then you can put them on a dashboard. So you figure out what are your alert levels, and then I would go into the next phase, specifying alerts, custom alerts in Dynatrace, and then get proactively notified while you run a test if one of these metrics is exceeding a threshold. Because nobody should sit and wait and look at dashboards anymore and look if a metric goes up. This can be done fully automated. I also showed you that the top web request view, I love it. Remember, the management zones are great, all the filtering, really cool stuff. Very easy to then narrow down and find particular transactions that you're interested in. Also, I showed you that you can click on the ... button, and then it automatically opens up a diagnostic view. So for instance, here in this screenshot, a service flow, right? You can see for this particular transaction, the end-to-end view and where end-to-end the time was actually spent. We also talked about the hotspots, so that's a great one. It's actually a screenshot from a recent thing that we changed in our own little sample app, and then all of a sudden we noticed that IIS modules are a hotspot, and Dynatrace, as you can see here, has full visibility into IIS modules, so we actually get to see also what happens in the web server natively, or if it is method related, the method hotspots, just as I showed you earlier with the sleep statement, same thing. All right, I also showed you a comparison, right? I love this aspect where you can compare different builds or different time frames. So you select one time frame, click on compare, right? Open up the box, click on compare, then you select the time frame of the other test or whatever you want to compare it with, and then you automatically see all the differences, and then you get to see the top methods and all the details on what is actually slower. Cool. Another cool use case is you can also compare two time frames with each other, and then Dynatrace immediately shows you which URLs, which endpoints are seen in one time frame versus the other. So I've seen testing teams using this to figure out which new URLs are coming in. So production teams, they're also figuring out, hey, we just had a new production deployment. Which new endpoints came in, or which ones went away? This is very interesting, whether Dynatrace immediately gives you this because you can compare two time frames with each other. It shows you the time difference, the throughput difference, the failure difference, but also shows you what is missing or what has been added. All right, perfect. Good. I guess we already did the demo. We don't need the demo anymore. Exceptions, another big thing for me. So let me quickly switch over to my exception view. So again, under diagnostic tools, there is a view called exceptions. And I probably go over to the other system because that's a little more interesting. Here we go. This is much more interesting. Diagnostic tools, exceptions. All right. So let's actually click on all. Let's see what we have here. Let's go to diagnostic tools, exception view. Now it's crunching through all the data, now 2 hours, right? My whole environment, and it shows me which exceptions have actually been captured by Dynatrace. Now these are exceptions that may never make it to any log file because they're handled by frameworks, or they're just handled and nobody is ever doing anything with it. But this is a very important piece for me because it shows you how busy your system is. Like in this case, in the last 2 hours, my system had 3,280 property access exceptions, right? Is this expected? Yes or no? Well, if it is expected, then I think I still want to make a note of it, and then you can actually configure Dynatrace to not capture it anymore. But if it's not expected, it means it's overhead. And then you should worry about it. What we've been doing internally, we look at exceptions from a sprint to sprint basis, and we are looking at the number of exceptions, and we demand that the number of exceptions are not growing, right? Because again, a lot of exceptions are coming in through frameworks, most often because of wrong configuration or wrong usage, and therefore we can get rid of most of these. And exceptions are expensive. Now, if we have these exceptions, we can click on an individual one if we want to. We immediately see this exception, how many exceptions are thrown of this particular type by which particular service, right? You can see the total impact. Then we can also click on exception details, which means we get to see the exception message, and we also get to see the full stack trace. So that's pretty neat as well. And what we can also do is we can then click on view the PurePath. So that means now it opens up all the PurePaths that have this exception, and you can see here we are in the PurePath view, and really the magic is that we just automatically got added a filter for that particular exception, and then you could go in and then you can look at the PurePath, and then you would see the end-to-end PurePath, and then also on the error side you would actually see all these exceptions including the full stack trace, right? So this is here, this is all really nicely integrated. So diagnostics view, exceptions. For me, very important. You want to figure out who are the noisy neighbors, who are the noisy exceptions, what can you do about it, who is throwing them, where are they thrown, and then keep an eye on it from build to build, from deployment to deployment, from release to release. Very important from my perspective. In the slides, I think I mentioned the same thing in the slides. Filter on a single exceptions. I just showed you this. Who throws these exceptions? So good. PurePaths, stack traces, it's all there. All right, demo time. We already did the demo time. Next thing is databases, and here actually I want to refer to the basic diagnostic session that I did, because I covered the database section in very much detail in my basic diagnostic. I just want to walk through the slides. So we automatically, obviously you can create your dashboards, we can get an overview, we show you the hotspots, but it's a couple of interesting use cases. So there is a top database. There's a database view where you can see all of your databases. You can switch and see the charts, like what are the top database instances, those with the highest failure rate. You can chart whatever you want. Now here's what's really nice, what I love about it. You can actually look at all the database statements that are coming in, and then you can sort by total time. So what's the highest impact, slowest response time, what are the slowest individual queries, sort by execution, so which ones are called very often, and also failure rate. So this is great. Actually, you know what, let me just at least show you where you get to this view. I still encourage you obviously to look at the basic diagnostic webinar that I did, but under diagnostic tools, top database statements, just as with the top web request or with the exceptions, it's crunching through all the SQL statements now that are executed across my entire system. The same filtering applies. I could filter my staging, my production environment, and then I can do all of these, sort by execution, sort by total time. So which is the statement that is executed most often and with the highest overall response time. I can look at it in the chart, I can filter it, so only show me this, or I can also do my diagnostics. So for instance, who is actually calling the statement? And I think this is a great view or a great way to figure out what's actually going on. So in this case, right, there were 3,800 requests coming in to this particular select statement, and I immediately see that they all came in from journey service, all from this one endpoint, and so on and so forth. And they can actually go back in the stack. So this is, I think, pretty nice. Now, what you can also do, if I go back to my top database statements, and I'm picking this select statement now, we can, as I said, also create a chart. That means now I get to see the execution count of this particular database statement. I could also, of course, say I'm not interested in the count. I want to see the response time. So show me the response time of this particular statement over time. Right? And then you can also save it to the service, which means this chart, so-called multidimensional analysis chart, is always available for you. All right. And a lot of other use cases, but as I said, please watch the basic diagnostic webinar that I did. Right? I talked about dependencies, just as I showed you. Start on a database, figure out who is calling it. This is also a great way to detect the n+1 query problem. If the same service is calling the same SQL statement multiple times, you will see it also split down by each individual service point. Also in the service flow on the top left, you can see how many database calls are made by a particular service, by a particular endpoint. It's all there. You can also go to the PurePaths. Another thing, key SQL statement, similar to what I showed you earlier with the key web requests. You can say this is a very important select statement. I want to mark it as a key request, right? And that means, again, it's automatically baseline, it's automatically trending. We can put it on a dashboard, but also, and this is what I mentioned before, also with the web requests, you can define your own custom anomaly detection rules. You can define your own custom SLAs, and then you get your own problem tickets in case a particular select statement is having an issue. I think that's pretty cool. And then again, maybe combine it with a notification to your Slack channel or whatever tool you want. Okay, demo time, I'll show you that. Services, here again, I want to encourage you to look at the basic diagnostic webinar that I did. And also, I think I covered some of this already in my first demo. It's all about Dynatrace detects services. You've seen that Dynatrace immediately detected my front-end service, my back-end service, every single microservice, whether it runs on bare metal, in a Docker container, in Kubernetes, and OpenShift, and Pivotal. It's all automatically detected. And then with different diagnostic options. First of all, we can figure out who is calling my service, where it is running on, and whom am I calling. In this case, it is a service that runs distributed across 4 different processes and hosts. 4 different Docker containers. In this case, it's called by 2 front-end apps. In itself, it's making a call to a check destination service, right? And typically what I do on services, figure out what are the slowest endpoints, what are the most resource-consuming endpoints. This is all stuff you can figure out with Dynatrace by just going to the service details. Also take a look at the response time hotspots, but we've seen all of this earlier, and in more detail, go to the basic diagnostic dashboard, the basic diagnostic webinar. All right, so there's a lot of more diagnostic options that are actually available. Log Analytics, if you want to learn more about Log Analytics, there is already a webinar that I've recorded that's on the YouTube channel. Same for network, same for synthetic, and we also have a couple of sessions on cloud and serverless. Check it out. There's other diagnostic options in the diagnostics view where you can extract memory dumps, where you can look at CPU samples. So this is also all available. Now, before I go to Q&A, just a little reminder, there's a lot of resources out there that you can leverage, right? First of all, I think you want to get your own Dynatrace trial, whether it's SaaS or managed. Managed means on-premise. SaaS is our SaaS model. Check it out. Also make sure you come to our Perform events. Make sure you check out our upcoming performance clinics, and there's a lot of training material online, whether it's the university, the YouTube playlist that I just showed you where all the rest is on there, the coffee breaks and power demos from my colleague Daniel. He did a phenomenal job, and then also the podcasts that I have. And very important, Perform, as I mentioned it, our annual Perform user conference in Vegas is coming up end of January. So if you have not registered yet, you may want to do this. We have a hands-on training day on Monday, and then it's 2 days of conference. So in hands-on training, we really do, we implement things like Dynatrace in your CI/CD, implementing self-healing, implementing Dynatrace in your Kubernetes environment. So there's a lot of cool sessions that we do. And we also have regional series in Europe and in APAC regions, right? So now I want to open it up for Q&A because I see there's a lot of questions that came in. And I hope I can answer all of them. Okay. So, and by the way, if you have any questions, there's a question feature. Right? So I would like to know if there is any API where mobile app can push its custom data to Dynatrace from user device. Yes. So first of all, let me go back. We do have automated support for mobile devices. So for mobile applications, that means if you have an Android or an iOS application, you can just instrument it with our mobile ADK. So I, for instance, have my Easy Travel mobile app. That means we automatically get every single user, every single click, every single crash, every single call to the backend. This is part of our mobile instrumentation, our mobile agent. As I said, iOS and Android. If you want to instrument something different, not just like a mobile app, but actually like a special device, like an IoT type device, we also have an answer for you. And for this, actually, I would love to point you to the recent blog that I put out, where we've actually shown how we are instrumenting our HoloLens. So I'm sure maybe you have heard about the Microsoft HoloLens. So this is a blog that talks about how we can use the so-called Dynatrace Open Kit to instrument, let's say, non-traditional devices like a HoloLens. But for mobile apps, really the best way, the best I can tell you is that you go into Deploy Dynatrace, right? And then we have mobile app monitoring. You can see this here, set up mobile monitoring, and then you just follow the step. Okay, so hopefully this answers the question. The next one, is there a generic one agent that can be assigned to any local or SaaS managed system, or is it specifically generated? So the one agent is specific to your Dynatrace environment. So that means in my case, my Dynatrace environment lives here on one of our servers, so it's a managed installation. The other installation that I have here, this is where's my other one? It's also a managed installation. But the idea is if you go to Deploy Dynatrace and if you click on Start Installation and you pick your OS, then you get the download link exactly for an agent that is the full agent installer that works on all the Linux machines and does the full stack instrumentation. And this agent installer also knows where to send data to. So that's packaged. That means if you want to take it, well, you can download that and then you can package it up into your Terraform scripts into your CloudFormation scripts, either download it directly, or you can download the agent and then package that agent with your deployment automation. If that, Michael, if that's the question you're asking. I have a request to have this webinar recorded. Yeah, so there is by the way, the webinar is recorded, and you can see the webinar later on, either on university.dynatrace.com, right? That's one option. Or the other option is there's a YouTube channel, and it's part of the Dynatrace YouTube account, and there's one playlist that is called Dynatrace One Agent Performance Clinics. So I really encourage you to look into this. All right. Yeah, it's been recorded. How can we monitor MQ connections, MQ servers in details? So if you, as I said earlier, Dynatrace blog MQ, there were just a couple of blogs announced, from my colleague Michael Kopp on our support for MQ. So I would really encourage you to look at this, to look at these latest blogs. So Michael Kopp, he's the key product manager for everything that is related to message queuing. I mean, he's doing a lot of cool things. He's also the one to thank for most of the diagnostic features. But if you are looking at the latest blog posts from him, IBM Integration Bus, IBM MQ, akka remoting, right? There's a lot of stuff from him. So Kishore, please have a look at his blog posts, and then you can see how to use these features. Some of them have to be enabled in Dynatrace through a checkbox, but hopefully this answers the question. I'm on One Agent version 147. I cannot see the CPU analysis in the transactions and services in this. Is this a new feature? Let me show you this again. The CPU analysis. So under transactions and services, there is no CPU analysis directly. But if where the CPU analysis is, there's multiple points. Under diagnostic tools, this is where you have the CPU analysis, and I think this has been there for a while, definitely longer than 147. Now this is a point, this is an entry point where we show you, we give an overview of all the CPU consumption of all of your instrumented services, and then you can focus on a particular time frame, and then you can, just as I did earlier, right, you can define the analysis time frame, let's say 30 minutes, and then you can see, was it a service request, was it backend, was it garbage collection, and then you can also click on show code level. So that's pretty neat. And then this here is new, this is newer, so I think you're right. This view, the hotspots view, has been revamped. It was there in a different form, but I believe this came in not too long ago. Okay, so this is something that you want to maybe, a good reason to upgrade. The problem evolution, as I said earlier, is not a new feature, right? Dynatrace problem detection has always been there from the start. That means if I go to my problems view, and if I may open up a larger time frame to see an exciting problem, then I can pick a problem like this one here. Right? This is where Dynatrace was automatically analyzing and monitoring all my complete environment, and it basically understood that there was a problem with two applications, and it shows me what type of applications are impacted. It immediately points me to the root cause. In this case, it's a slow service. It also says that the service was running on two machines that had high CPU utilization. I can immediately get access to the log files, and here's the problem evolution. Right? It's called the visual resolution path. And if you click on it, now this is where you get to see the part of the infrastructure, not everything, but only the part of the infrastructure, those components that support these two apps that are having an issue. And then you can click on replay. Now in this case, this is a problem that is already closed. But if the problem would be open, right, the problem evolution would play until like right now, where the problem is still active. And the elements here, these are all events. And events are, as I said, a deployment event, a configuration change event, a slowness, a crash, a high failure rate, any metric that goes out of whack. So this is all there. This is the problem evolution. Yeah? Can we utilize Dynatrace to find the security vulnerability on a website? So what you can, we have a lot of data, so that means you can look at all the requests that are coming in. You can see who is calling in. You can query all this data. So you could definitely use the data for some type of security vulnerability analysis, right? Because we see every single incoming call, and with all the request details, who is making the call, which parameters are used, how often is this user calling in. So you can definitely utilize this for some security vulnerability checks. Can we add a threshold on the dashboards? Right now, the threshold on the dashboard is currently in development. I just had a session with our product management team where they showed all the dashboard enhancements that are coming. And I think like writing or putting the dashboard line is one of them that is coming very soon. So what's the next here? How can we change the color of the charts dashboards? Also, this is an improvement that comes in, and maybe I can just show you the product management team is doing a really good job in keeping people up to speed on what's happening with certain features, and especially with the dashboarding. If you go to answers.dynatrace.com, and I believe it's on the Dynatrace product ideas. And if you go to the forum Dynatrace product ideas, then there are, you can see here, some pinned questions. So planned features for Cloud Foundry, IBM MQ, 1H, and then this is the one for the dashboards. So if you go to this one, so it's answers.dynatrace.com, that's the website, log on, click on the Dynatrace product ideas forum, and then open up the planned enhancements for custom dashboards. And that's going to be the blog post that actually shows exactly what's coming, right? And everything that is planned. So custom colors is coming in 154. Actually, that should be out there already. So that's thing coming. Okay. Hopefully this answers your question. Can an entity belong to more than one management zone? Yes, management zones are configured. Let's just show you where this is. Under settings, under preferences, and management zones. This is where you can configure your management zones, and it's all tag based. So staging, if I look at staging, it says it is all the entities, all the hosts that are in the VMware data center where the name begins with Easy Travel Demo, all the services. So there's naming, there is tags, so that means you can have the same entity in multiple management zones. And again, there's a great blog post about it and some information. Next question, can we create custom alerts rather than the usual one with tenant details, for example? I'm not 100% sure. I think the question goes on here. Custom alert. Is there a way we can... Yeah, so you can set thresholds. So Srini, I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. Maybe you want to post it on the discussion forum, because it seems there's a little more information that is needed here. And also we're running a little low on time. We've got 5 more minutes. Is there a way we can set a threshold for a server or web service to define the failure? If 98% call are okay, then we're good. Else, yeah, this is exactly, you can specify the failure rate. You can set it to a certain threshold. Like in your case, it would be 2% failure rate. 98% are good. If 2% are wrong, then you get an alert. Yes, you can all do this. Can you export these metrics to create load testing report? So again, from a dashboarding perspective, there will be exporting capabilities where you can actually take a dashboard and then export it. What you can already do, and I love this a lot, under integrations, Dynatrace API, you can, we have a very thorough REST API. So that means you just saw me, settings, integration, Dynatrace API. This is where we have our API exposed through Swagger. So time series, you can query any time series data. And what I really encourage you to watch is, first of all, the planned enhancements for the dashboards, because there's also enhancements for reporting. And what I definitely want you to watch is I had a session on the YouTube channel, and it's called Dynatrace reporting through the API, that's one. And then what I really, Dynatrace reporting and dashboarding, or the BI. I think that's actually what it is. Yeah, no, this is the one. Dynatrace reporting through the API. This is the performance clinic you want to watch. This is actually where the team showed how you can use the Dynatrace data in a dashboard and then, create nice reports, even push it into a BI solution. The next question, what's the difference between filtering requests and web request URL? That's a great question. So the difference here, I believe you're talking about diagnostic tools, top web requests, add filter. So in Dynatrace, we understand services, and we know that some services are web services or that are exposing endpoints through a web URL. And where is this again, the web request filter? The idea here is this request here goes to the name of the service endpoint that we specify. So by default for web applications, it's the URL. But it could also be that we have some custom naming rules where you can override the naming of these requests in Dynatrace, but you can also define so-called custom service entry points. And this is where request would cover all of this, but web request URL would only go to those that actually come in from on a web-based service. I hope this makes sense. Is there a way to find the exact number of requests sent by a service? Sure. So I can go to let's say the Easy Travel customer frontend, right? And then I'm not sure if you say send to, you probably want to say send to the next level. I would go to the service flow. So if you click on view service flow, you click on view service flow. Now we see that there were 7.7 million requests coming in the last 2 hours, in the last 24 hours on Easy Travel customer frontend, right? This is the 7.7. And then if you click over here, you can actually see how many requests were made to booking service. Okay, 65,000. You can see it here, right? So on the top right, you can always see how many calls are made from one to the next. Now, the cool thing is this does not only work for the whole Easy Travel customer frontend, but now I can say, Dynatrace, I only want to see those requests that were, here's your web request URL. Now I understand. So this was the different question, right? What's the difference between web request URL and request? What I want to say is you can also say, only show me those HTTP posts. I'm only interested in posts. So now it's crunching through all the data, and it tells me, hopefully soon, right? But it's crunching through several million of requests, and is now doing multidimensional filtering because you can actually have multiple filters up there. Now it tells me there were 183,000 HTTP post requests, and these made 70,000 requests to the booking service, 36,000 requests to the journey service, and so on and so forth. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I hope this answers the question. I think this is a great point to put in. Are you sharing the slide deck? Yes, the slide deck will be uploaded to Dynatrace University. So as I said, the recording will be uploaded to Dynatrace University as well as on YouTube. And on University, we also upload the slide deck. Can you explain the method hotspots? I can. So let me go into, let's say, the booking service. And if I say response time, come on, let's click on here. By the way, I just noticed we are at the top of the hour, and I can now see that people are kind of dropping off. If there are, I'll try to add 1 or 2 more questions, but eventually we probably have to call it, to maybe do another webinar at some point, or put it to answers.dynatrace.com. I think you asked about method hotspots. So if I click on a thing here, on a time frame, and then I say few method hotspots, what it basically does, it analyzes all the PurePaths, all the transactions that are coming in, and it then says, so what are the common call trees So it basically it does an aggregation of all the PurePath information and says what are the most common call trees and where is most of the time spent. And is it network, disk I/O, code execution, wait, and log time? So this is kind of like thread run. This is the entry point, and this is kind of like a regular, call tree, but everything combined. So all in this case, every transaction that came in this 1 hour. Now here you can actually see it over time. So where is most of the time spent within that hour? That's great. We also have top APIs. So we are actually trying to give API names. So if certain parts of your code base belongs to certain frameworks, and then we are showing you, like in this case, Reflection and Apache. There's not a whole lot of different APIs, but it shows you where time is spent. And then Hotspot is really cool because Hotspot crunches through all the data and says, where's really most of the time spent? Which method? And in this case, it's the socket input stream socket read. And if you click on it, on the bottom, you see the backtrace. All right. I would love to do more questions, but I really see people dropping up, and I know we reserved this for an hour. I would say thank you so much. I think we can continue the discussion on answers.dynatrace.com. You also obviously know my name. Feel free to reach out to me as well. And I'm sure we'll do other performance clinics in the future around diagnostics. And in every clinic, you can always ask any type of questions. Yes, there was a recording of this webinar. It will be put up on Dynatrace University. It seems the question comes up a lot. That slide deck will also be shared on university.dynatrace.com. Okay? And if there's more questions, answers.dynatrace.com. Follow me on Twitter. Send me messages, and make sure you go to perform.dynatrace.com. This is where you can get hands-on experience and talk to other people, other users. It's coming up soon. All right. And thanks, Denise, for the recording and for putting it up on Dynatrace University soon. Thank you so much. Have a good day, a good evening. See you next time. Bye-bye.